May 19, 1983. Springfield, Oregon. A mother drives her children to the hospital. 2 are barely alive, 1 is already dead, shot. Diane Downs looks calm. She says a stranger did it. But something about her story doesn't add up. 3 children, 2 dead, 1 fighting for life. A mom on the stand claiming innocence. And a little girl who changes everything with her voice. This isn't fiction. It's a real crime. The courtroom called it evil beyond belief. Watch till the end and judge it for yourself. Subscribe now to at MysteryPlaybacksSeries.com. May 19, 1983, Springfield, Oregon. It was just after 10:48 p.m. The emergency room at McKenzie-Willamette Hospital was calm. A nurse checked her chart. A security guard yawned by the vending machine. Then, the screeching of tires broke the silence. A red Nissan Pulsar skidded into the hospital's emergency bay, nearly hitting the wall. The car door swung open. A woman stumbled out, screaming, "Somebody shot my kids! Oh my God, help!" It was Diane Downs, 27 years old. Blonde. Pretty. Calm, but not quite right. 3 children lay inside the car. 1 in the front. 2 in the back. All shot at close range. 1 was dead. 1 was dying. 1 would never walk again. The ER staff rushed into action. But something felt off right from the beginning. Born Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson in 1955, she grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. She was raised in a strict, religious home. Quiet. Controlled. At 14, she met Steve Downs, a boy who lived just down the road. By 16, they were inseparable. But Diane had a wild side. She rebelled. She chopped her hair short. She got kicked out of her conservative college for promiscuity. By age 24, she had 3 children, Christy, Cheryl, and Danny. But her marriage with Steve was falling apart. They fought constantly. She said he wasn't supportive. He said she was unstable. By 1980, they divorced. Diane took the kids. She bounced from job to job, eventually landing at the post office in Cottage Grove, Oregon. And that's when things really began to unravel. Diane told police she'd taken her children on a drive. Just a normal night, she said. They'd gone to visit a friend. They stopped to look at a horse. Then, while driving along Old Mohawk Road, a lonely, dark stretch, a bushy-haired stranger flagged them down. Diane said she stopped. The man demanded her car. When she refused, he pulled out a gun and started shooting. She claimed she managed to fake throw her car keys and escape. Then she raced to the hospital. But the story didn't make sense. Detectives arrived at the hospital minutes later. Diane was strangely composed. Not crying. Not hysterical. Just explaining. Calmly. She talked about the man who attacked them, but couldn't describe his face. Or his clothes. Her arm had been shot, a superficial wound on her forearm. Clean. Almost too clean. Meanwhile, Cheryl, 7 years old, was dead. Danny, 3, was paralyzed from the chest down. Christy, 8, had suffered a stroke from the bullet to her head, but she was still alive. Doctors weren't sure she'd survive the night. And still, Diane showed little emotion. The red Nissan was taken in for forensic analysis. It told a very different tale. There was no blood on the driver's side. No sign of struggle. No gunpowder residue outside the car. All shots came from inside, from the driver's seat. Investigators were stunned. Was the killer not a stranger? Could it have been either mother? Days later, Cheryl was buried in a small ceremony. Diane wore a tight dress and bright lipstick. She smiled. She waved at cameras. She gave interviews. It was so traumatic. I'll never get over it, she said, casually twirling her hair. The public began to feel uneasy. Who acts like this after losing a child? Then something darker emerged. While investigating Diane's home, police found letters. Stacks of them. All to a married man named Robert Nick Knickerbocker, a former co-worker. They'd had an affair. He'd broken it off. In the letters, Diane begged for his love. She said the kids were in the way. She promised they wouldn't be a burden much longer. It was a possible motive. Chilling. Cold. She wanted him back, and the kids were in the way. Suddenly, her behavior made more sense. Weeks passed. Christy Downs, just 8 years old, woke from her coma. But she couldn't speak. Not yet. Doctors feared she might never recover fully. Then one night, during therapy, she tried to talk. She cried when asked about her mom. When doctors showed her photos of a gun, she flinched. Over time, she began forming full sentences. And one day, she finally said what everyone feared. "My mom did it." She remembered everything. This is a real story. Every fact you hear is public. You can check it yourself. If real-life mysteries leave you breathless, subscribe now to at MysteryPlaybacksSeries.com. Because the truth that truly haunts might be closer than you think. The hospital room was quiet. Christy Downs, just 8 years old, sat in a wheelchair, her hand shaking as she spoke. She was weak. She had survived a gunshot wound to the chest and a stroke. But her mind was clear. And her words would break open the case. She stopped the car. She got out. Then, she shot us. Doctors stared. Therapists sat in silence. It wasn't a stranger. Christy said it had been her mother. Diane. Each day, Christy remembered more. Therapists used dolls to help her communicate. She pointed to the driver's seat. She showed how her mother had leaned over and fired the gun. She went to Cheryl first, she whispered one day. Then Danny. Then me. When asked why her mother had done it, Christy simply said, "She didn't want us." It was a truth no child should ever have to say. Police still hadn't found the murder weapon. But ballistics from the bullets matched an unusual .22 caliber handgun, the same kind Diane had once owned. She denied ever having such a gun. But witnesses, neighbors and co-workers said otherwise. One even claimed Diane had bragged about how quiet the gun was. Another said she practiced shooting at cans near the river. As Christy healed, Diane was all over the media. She smiled in interviews. She joked with reporters. She reenacted the shooting on camera, showing how she fought off the imaginary attacker. But her story kept changing. The direction of the shots. The timing. The details. When asked what went through her mind after the shooting, she famously said, "It was pain. It was fear. It was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. But excitement too." The public was horrified. Who talks like that after shooting your own children? On February 28, 1984, 9 months after the shooting, Diane Downs was arrested and charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of criminal assault. She was pregnant again. This time with a different man's child. Investigators believed she got pregnant on purpose, to sway the jury. To appear like a loving mother. The baby was born shortly before the trial and later adopted out to a different family. May 1984. The courtroom was packed. Oregon vs. Downs became one of the most watched trials of the decade. Diane arrived smiling, hair curled, dressed in bright colors. She took the stand. She cried. She told the same story. It was a stranger. He wanted my car. I tried to stop him. But the evidence said otherwise. No fingerprints. And then, the prosecution brought out their star witness. The room went silent. Christy, now 9 years old, walked slowly to the stand. Her voice was soft. Her hands trembled. She had practiced this for months with therapists. And when asked who shot her, she pointed directly at Diane. "My mom," she whispered. The courtroom gasped. Diane stared back at her daughter. Blank. Cold. Christy looked down and began to cry. The prosecution ended with one final image. They showed photos of the car, the blood splatters, the silence of Cheryl, the wheelchair of Danny, and the small, quiet pain in Christy's eyes. "She shot her babies," the prosecutor said. "Not once, but again, and again, and again." Then she drove slowly to the hospital to make sure they died. On June 17, 1984, the jury returned their verdict. Guilty. Diane Downs was convicted of murder and attempted murder. She was sentenced to life in prison plus 50 years. She showed no emotion. As she was led away in cuffs, she glanced at the crowd and smiled. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. We share real stories, real danger, and the truth behind every headline. Subscribe to at MysteryPlaybacksSeries.com and help us bring light to the darkest corners of true crime. After her conviction, Diane Downs was sent to the Oregon Women's Correctional Center. She remained cold, unbothered. To fellow inmates, she bragged about her story. Told them the media loved her. She never showed remorse. She believed she could manipulate anyone, judges, guards, psychologists. And she had a plan. Court-appointed psychologists diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial tendencies. She was labeled a danger to society. But Diane insisted she was a victim. She repeated the story again and again about the bushy-haired stranger. No remorse. No apology. But she was always calculating. And one night, she vanished. It was July 11, 1987. 3 years into her sentence. Diane was seen on surveillance inside the prison yard. Then, she disappeared. An hour passed before guards noticed. She had scaled a 12-foot fence and vanished into the night. Panic spread through the state. For 10 days, Diane was on the run. Police warned the public she was dangerous, and she might try to contact children. They searched rural homes, checked bus stations, followed every lead. Finally, she was found 10 days later, hiding in a house less than a mile from the prison. She'd been living with another inmate's husband. He had helped her plan the escape. She was immediately returned to custody and transferred to a high-security prison in New Jersey. The escape only deepened the public's horror. While awaiting trial back in 1984, Diane gave birth to a daughter. She named her Amy Elizabeth. The baby was taken from her at birth. Adopted by a loving family, she was renamed Rebecca Becky Babcock. For years, Becky didn't know who her biological mother was. Then, as a teenager, she found out. She was stunned. Heartbroken. In interviews years later, Becky said, "When I found out Diane Downs was my mother, I felt like my soul had been ripped out." She still struggles with the weight of the truth. But she also said, "I am not her. I am nothing like her." Danny, now paralyzed, was adopted by the lead prosecutor in the case. Christy, who bravely testified, was adopted as well, raised in a loving, stable home. Both children stayed far away from Diane. They never spoke to her again. In the decades that followed, they remained silent, living private lives. But their bravery, especially Christy's, became a symbol of strength for survivors of abuse. Even in prison, Diane sought attention. She gave multiple TV interviews. In 2008, she told 2020ths, "I did not shoot my kids. I loved them. I was not believed because I'm a woman, and women are expected to be soft." But her words fell flat. The public had long made up their minds. A jury had too. Even her surviving children had made peace without her. Diane became eligible for parole in 2008. She appeared before the board, still insisting she was innocent. Still blaming a mystery man. Still refusing to admit guilt. She was denied. Again in 2010, denied. Then again in 2020, denied. Each time, the board cited her refusal to take responsibility as proof that she was unfit for release. She remains incarcerated today. The Diane Downs case became a national symbol of maternal betrayal, of lies, and of justice. It sparked books, documentaries, TV movies. And Rule's Small Sacrifices became a bestseller, later turned into a TV film starring Farrah Fawcett as Diane. But beyond the headlines were the real lives left shattered. Cheryl, forever 7. Danny, paralyzed for life. Christy, haunted by memories, but brave beyond her years. This is not fiction. Every detail is part of a real case that you can verify yourself. The court records. The interviews. The wounds. The courage of a child who told the truth. Subscribe now to at MysteryPlaybacksSeries.com, because the darkest stories are sometimes the most human. Tucked away in a quiet Oregon cemetery lies the grave of Cheryl Lynn Downs. She was only 7 years old when her life was taken by the person she trusted most. Her headstone is small. Simple. A few toys and flowers still appear each year from anonymous visitors. No matter how much time passes, people still remember her. A little girl who didn't deserve what happened. Danny Downs, now in his 40s, lives a quiet life. He remains paralyzed from the waist down, but has built a new life, far from the woman who harmed him. He rarely speaks publicly, but those close to him say he has found peace. He works hard. He smiles often. He never let Diane's actions define his future. Christy Downs, now grown, has stayed out of the spotlight. But she's never forgotten. She was the voice that broke the silence, the brave child who testified in front of her mother. Her words convicted Diane. And her silence now speaks just as loudly. She has children of her own. She lives a private life. But to many survivors of child abuse, her story is a symbol of courage. Rebecca "Becky" Babcock, Diane's child born during the trial, has spoken publicly several times. She has shared her own trauma, discovering who her mother really was. She's battled mental health struggles, identity crises, and public curiosity. But she has always said, "I am not her. I am me." Becky went on to work in healthcare and even appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show to share her story. A daughter of a killer who chose light over darkness. Small Sacrifices by Anne Rule remains the most detailed retelling of the Diane Downs case. In it, Rule painted Diane not as a monster, but as a deeply broken, dangerous narcissist. The TV movie of the same name shocked viewers in the 90s. Yet, many still ask, how could a mother do this? Did Diane ever truly believe her lies? Was it just jealousy, narcissism, or something darker? Now in her late 60s, Diane Downs is still serving her life sentence. She has never admitted guilt. In 2021, she wrote a letter from prison to the Oregonian, still blaming that mystery man. Still claiming to be innocent. Still trying to manipulate from behind bars. And the parole board continues to deny her requests, citing her lack of remorse, lack of empathy, and ongoing narcissism. She may die in prison. Alone. This story isn't just about Diane Downs. It's about Cheryl, the innocent victim. It's about Danny and Christy, or the survivors. It's about Becky, the daughter born into trauma but who chose peace. And it's about every child whose voice was silenced by someone who should have protected them. What makes this story haunt so many is that it was real. Not a film. Not a novel. A real woman. Real children. Real bullets. Real blood. Real betrayal. And still, decades later, it shocks us. In a cold evidence garage somewhere in Oregon, the red Nissan Pulsar still sits. Bullet holes in the seats. Dried blood on the doors. A silent witness to one of the most horrifying crimes in American history. It sits in stillness. And maybe that's where this story should end. Have you ever heard this story before? What do you think truly drove Diane to do what she did? And how do we make sure voices like Christie's are always heard? Subscribe now to at MysteryPlaybacksSeries.com. Because every week, we don't just tell stories. We uncover the truth behind them. Watch the next story on your screen, or explore our playlist of haunting real crimes and mysteries. The next one might be even more unbelievable.